Right, exciting. So we're at the very last stage of getting your model from PhotoScan, cutting it up and putting it onto an iPad or Android device or web player or what have you through this app that I've made. So the last part, the last tutorial video, I just left it exporting the bundles to a bunch of different targets. So I did them all: PC, OS X, web, iOS, and Android. It wasn't taking too long to do it. It was running through fairly fast. And now you see the bundle directory that we selected for export. There's content for all of these platforms. So the last stage now is just to upload these somewhere that's available, viewable and accessible on the web somewhere. So I am going to, let's have a look. I'm going to put it on Amazon Web Services on my S3 storage, just because why not? So just in the other screen, I'm logging onto my Amazon Web Services. If you've got a website that you can put things on, you might FTP into your server and just copy them into a folder. Just make sure that the permissions for those files are set so that you can so that other people can see them. So let's have a look at that. This is probably slightly different from the process that you'll be going through. Viewer, bundles. So it's arbitrary where you put it at this point. It doesn't matter at all where you put your content, as long as it's visible, as long as someone can go with a web browser, type in the web address, and it will pop up, then you're good to go. So it could be anything. I mean, if you're in the 90s, you could put it on a GeoCities website, whatever, it doesn't matter. And the power of this means that you can share, distribute your content without needing to have an Apple development license or creating your own tools. All you need to do is just have somewhere to put it. So I am going to create, this is where I've decided to put it. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to generate a new folder, call it Creek. If you were using an FTP program, you'd do a similar process to this. And actually, if you were using an FTP program, you could pretty much just come along. I don't think that you can do it with this, unfortunately. Let's see, I haven't tried it. And just pull those folders in there. Ah, yeah, it's working. Okay, that's great. So I'm just pulled those folders in. Because it's through Amazon Web Services, I need to tell it at the end to set permissions to make everything public. You may or may not need to change permissions on your files when you upload them. Most of the time you probably won't, but it's something to think about. Just make sure afterwards that you can type in a web. We'll look at that in a second, actually, to make sure, to test that you can see it. Okay, so we just hit start upload. It's going to run through. Not really sure how long it's going to take for this process. It's a fairly fast internet connection here. And while it's doing that, completing those bits and pieces, I'll just show you how you can test to make sure that your content is readable. So just going to go into the Android folder. Okay. And the manifest, so these are our bundle components that it's uploaded. For each different platform, so Android or iOS or what have you, there's a file named after the platform, which is just it just contains the names of all of the other bundles. So this is like an index for all of these sections. You don't need to know that, but just to test to make sure that everything is visible, it can be reached by anyone on the web. I'm just going to go to the Android manifest. Let's go properties. And here is the public link. And let's have a look. Well, it's downloading it. I will keep it, actually. And let's open it with Notepad, just why not? Well, it downloaded it anyway, so we know that it's publicly accessible. And here you can see it's the index file. It's got all the names of the other parts in it, so that's great. All right, so I wonder how this process is going now. Actually, I think that it's possible that it might have finished. I'll just have it definitely hasn't finished because there's still a few parts to go. But let's have a look. I'm running on a PC, so it's just started generating the so Android, OS X, PC, web. I'm not sure where the status has disappeared to, so I can't really tell when it's finished other than just sort of like waiting around until it pops back up with all of the correct folders. But I think the fact that it started the web folder, I'll just check and make sure that it looks like everything's in there. The light, the canvas, our 2-point lights, and our parts. Okay, so that's ready to go. Because I'm going to be testing it out on a PC, I don't need to wait for the other bits of content to upload. I can just, I'll check to make sure that they've finished just to make sure that they're up there. But for the moment, I can test it now. So go back into your Unity 3D. I did turn the load message off. I'm going to turn that back on. And also one thing that I modified before was just making that guy visible. I don't want him visible anymore. So now you've created the assets. You don't need any of these objects here. I might leave them for the minute just to be a bit prudent. And then we'll delete them when we've made sure that everything is loading okay. But definitely I'm going to delete them from my world because it's going to dynamically load rather than being part of everything. So if we just go to our root node, it's actually this one or this one. It's all underneath there, and we delete. Then we're ready to go. The last thing that we want to do is go into our into the options. Yes, we want to save into the options scene. So we'll load up the options scene and we'll just hit play to run the options scene. I might make it standalone in the right size. So I'll just pull the game view out so it's sort of a little bit closer to what it will look like on the iPad. There you go. Okay. So here we go. I'm just going to run it in its fastest version because why not? Click anywhere on the screen. And now let's get the address that we've uploaded that stuff to. Let me see if I can find it. S3 console. Okay. So here's my, you have to pay a little bit of attention to how you point to it. We're not actually pointing to the individual platform folders. We're just pointing to the root folder that contains the platform folders. So what we want actually is that location of that. So I think if we will actually have to look at a file, I think, to get it to tell us what the address is. So we'll take this address here. I'll just stick it here. Boom, 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 boom. You don't need the HTTPS, but that's fine to leave it on. And we'll just delete all that until we get to the folder that we created to put everything in. So that's Bundles Creek. If I cut and paste that, I just paste it into this little section here and say add, then it's going through and it's loading all of the sections. This font is a little bit funny. It kind of is impossible to see the decimal place, so it looks like it's 500 megs rather than 5 point whatever meg. I might change that, but it's not too upsetting. And it's dynamically loading this content that we've just put up online. So this is our box 001, which, if you remember, is in the far right hand corner of the model. And the next one should be right next to it, box 002. There we go. And so on. One thing that I will change before, just before I put the app for the iPad online, is just making it a little bit brighter because it's a little bit dingy in here. I think I can make it a little bit brighter so it looks the results are a little bit brighter. I'm not sure why I decided to make it so dark originally, but it won't be this dark later on. Actually, I can preview that. I'll just stop this now, and let's have a look at what it will look like in the end. Lighting. Let's get rid of the fog's off. Good. Ambient lighting. I think the fog might be on this one, yes. And ambient lighting. Let's make it more white. And we'll save those changes. So actually now this is what it will look like when you're actually using this app. We'll just open Creek again, and it will start loading the bits that it's downloaded already. Where are they? There they go. That's a bit brighter. That looks a little bit better. And now continuing going on with the other parts. So the colliders should be loaded as well, which means that I won't be able to run through it. It's something that I can sort of bump into. Great, and I'm not really sure what would happen if a collider loads while I'm standing in the middle of it. I don't really want to get stuck on it, so I'll just come over here. And then because it was right down the bottom, the final things that will load will be the lights, our two interesting colored lights, and our little bit of text that will pop up telling us about it. If you want that to load first, which might make more sense, then just pull it until it's up the top of your sorting order for your components. So it pretty much will load in the order that it's listed. So if you want to be a bit clever about how you load your content, maybe you want to load things closer to the camera first, then you can just rearrange the order of those components underneath the root node, and that will just it will load those bits in that order. So it would probably make more sense to load a little bit of text first, and then everything in front of the camera first, and then the background sort of later on. That's completely up to your own control. You can do whatever you want with that. There's a lot of flexibility in how you set that stuff up. And again, so the results here, I mean, we'll see it in a little bit more detail when this download thing has disappeared. This was quite a quick and dirty reconstructions. So the texture results, just because of the number of the cameras, all of them were sort of shot from this corner over here. So there wasn't sort of very much room for getting perspective on things. So some of that contributes to the fact that the reconstruction isn't super perfect. And then things like actually one of the things, if you look at the level of detail here now, and also here's our little bit of text that's loaded up, and our two lights will have loaded up as well. So the text is a bit high. I should have tried it out. Done one last preview to make sure that it was in the right place. But that's all right. It exists anyway. It's sort of hovering over the top like a title bar. So one thing that we can look at, if I stop this reconstruction, if I stop it running, start it again, just make sure that I run through the fantastic quality, then there'll be a noticeable difference. It doesn't need to download anymore. It will just sort of look slightly better. The texture should be twice as high resolution, so actually you can definitely see a difference there on this that bit right in front of me. So some of the resolution was just in the mode that I was in. Also, as I was saying, your size of sections will affect how high resolution the textures are in the end. And finally, if you're, here's a weird little bit of geometry that I need to fix, that I actually got stuck on now because it's the collider is doing weird things. Let's stop that. And have to remember not to get stuck on it again. If there are a few sort of decisions that you can make, you can be judicial in the way that you cut up your model in order to produce better results. And also in the stage where we decimate our mesh, so we started off with a 9 million polygon mesh, and then we sort of arbitrarily decided to go for an 80K mesh. And if you remember back when I was generating that mesh, I started with a 50K and just eyeballed it a little bit, and it didn't look like it was sort of giving enough. It looked like it was too far from the original shape of the mesh, of the original high poly mesh, to do it justice. So I didn't think that I was going to get a good result out of it. This one, the 80K, is okay, but there's some... okay, this texture artifact here is just because there's no camera at all that can see this point over here. All of the cameras were way over there. So this was sort of in the shadow. This was obscured. And obviously if I'd taken more images from different angles, then it would look better. On this bit, you'd get more coverage, and also the surface would be a little bit better reconstructed. What you'd probably find in this model is that surfaces that are facing the position over there where the cameras were will be quite well reconstructed, and then surfaces perpendicular, like these ones on the side, will be probably a little bit more noisy and bumpy. So some of it is the original PhotoScan reconstruction. There's a little bit of experimentation, potentially, or trial and error with how much you decimate the model by. Obviously, when you're thinking about decimating your model, the goal is to have not so many polygons in your final model that it will run incredibly slow on an iPad. Basically, it can't be so. When you start getting to the point of maybe 200,000 for a modern iPad, it might be pushing it a little bit. You'll have to experiment potentially and see what the results are. But less than that, you're going to have something that will run pretty smoothly, and definitely it will run versus a 9 million poly model that wouldn't run at all on a mobile device. So there's a few things to go for. One is making sure that your original PhotoScan model is good. The second is being fairly judicious in your decision of how many polygons you decimate the mesh by. And then the third one is deciding how small your sections are cut up into, because the smaller the sections, the denser the information on the textures which are applied to it. So it doesn't mean you have to download a little bit more, because there's a 4K texture, 3 4K textures effectively for each section, but your results will be a little bit higher detail as well. But I think this is pretty good. I will hopefully get a chance to go over how to fix this weird bit of geometry. But for the moment, I think this is it. We've finished. We've gone through the process of going from PhotoScan to Unity 3D to this site viewer application. Obviously, you can put your content wherever you want, and then just load it from the app. So it's fantastic. You can make your own content. No, it doesn't even really need to be publicly accessible. If you want to share someone like a prototype reconstruction or something, then you can just put it somewhere and not tell anyone else, and then they can put in the address and it will pop up. So it's a really nice way of sharing model information. Hopefully in the future I'll be putting some new features into it, like annotation, like distributed persistent annotation, and also the ability to play back tours through the space. I think that will be quite a nice thing to do, which will be much more like the Trafalgar Street Tunnel projects that I've done so far, if you want to get an idea of what I'd like to add to this. Apart from that, ideally in the future as well, I will dynamically load only content that you need. So I'll load up like low detail models to begin with, and then as you get closer, load up high detail models. And what this will allow us to do is have really, really big environments that only load as you get close to them. Another thing about the downloading once and then being able to view it, having it cached on your device, is that you can load up this content and then take it out into somewhere where there's no internet connection, and you've still got it there to visualize. And especially on something like an iPad where it's a portable device, you can very easily sort of bring it around with you and show people what you're talking about and what you've done, which should be quite useful. Okay, brilliant. The app for iPad should be out in a couple of weeks. For Android, it might take a little bit longer because I just need to set up the development environment for that. But it's from Unity, it's very easy to build to a bunch of different platforms. I should get a web player version and also a Mac and a PC native version that you can run. And those will all be available. I'll put updates and more information on tacticalspace.org. There'll be a page dedicated to this project. And maybe I will make a PDF just on the research side of things, just a little bit of a discussion of the project and where it can go from here. Brilliant. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me, put a comment on tacticalspace.org or a comment in this video. Thanks very much.